All right, good morning. If you could hear me, let me know if you could hear me in the chat here. I've been gone for a little bit and recovering from the flu. I'm still not right, but here I am. All right, so we got a reversal market conditions out there in terms of Section 8, and I'm going to discuss a little bit of what that means for you guys. So what we're starting to see is, as we've all learned in 2025, they've suggested about half the funding be cut in terms of Section 8 housing and vouchers, subsidies, and also continuum of care programs that may cover PSH, rapid rehousing, and EHB or emergency housing voucher. So, since the federal government sets guidelines according to Congress, that means that virtually all 4,300 housing authorities out there have to make one or two choices. For those that were good stewards of money or did not have great demand, it means that those housing authorities are probably going to open the waiting list. And at current, there's between 300 to 400 housing authorities suggesting they've got room. But just because they open and say they're going to open doesn't mean that they're going to issue 4,000 vouchers. Many of them are only issuing a handful of vouchers, if that. And same thing with subsidized housing and many other types of vouchers. For those that don't know, there are roughly 128 different types of vouchers out there, including state, federal, county, and other programs. Okay, all these things are federally funded. You've got people that are using Section 811, Section 202, and then many more that I've mentioned previously in other videos. Now, before I get started, my name is Jay. I am the owner of Section8Consulting.com. I retired January 1st, but my office still does remain open for independent consults, short ones, anywhere from 10 minutes to 30 minutes. And I got with the New York Times, and I printed my own QR code. For those of you who don't know how to use a QR code, you simply pull out your phone, open up your camera, and then align it with the QR code there, and it'll bring up a link right below that photograph. And you just tap on it, and you're at the website. So if you have questions or other concerns about housing, you can certainly reach out to my office by appointment. Okay. Please note that I do not offer casework for anybody anymore. Okay. So I'm not going to go out there and get you a voucher, stuff like that. But what I can do is advise you on how to help yourself do that. Okay. Beyond that, let's talk about the reversal. So some of your biggest housing authorities in America right now are currently retracting vouchers. In other words, they don't have the funding. And so they're calling in about anywhere from a few housing vouchers to several thousand, meaning that people that previously barely qualified are no longer qualified. And so they're asking for the voucher back and that you make reparation and move on with your life. Okay. Also, midterms are coming up at the presidential level and for Congress and the House. And with midterms means we're looking at a high potential that there could be rolling out the new changes, and that would be the 2-year time limits on housing vouchers. And it could also mean that you have work requirements up to 30 hours. The midterms will determine that. If it remains in Republican control, then the success rate with these rules rolling out will be 100%. They're going to do it. And so we should expect that between summer and October. Now, if it does not, midterms do not, they don't work out, then it'll happen that it's more, they won't be having a vote in order to be able to pass this. And so there's been a big outcry also nationwide on both sides of the aisle that there's too many changes with the funding as well as limits and other things. And so there's been a bit of backtracking. So this year we'll make that defining moment depending on what happens in midterms. What we do know now is, we don't need midterms to approve budgets. And so, there is a loss of funding there. On the related side, when we talk about housing authorities, the housing choice voucher, project-based housing, tenant-based housing, subsidized, that's all in one area. Let's jump over to a different area, Continuum of Care program, also federally funded for those that are homeless or need immediate assistance. They have rolled that back as well. So they were going to dissipate that completely, but because of the big outcry across the nation and thousands of lawsuits, they have determined for now that they're not going to do anything. And so I'm still unclear as to what that means. If there isn't any funding, but you're not going to do anything, does that mean there's money for it? Is it open? What's going to be the deal? And so, as we look at the market conditions, it would suggest that we're still operating a continuum of care, which hosts rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and emergency housing vouchers. These three different type of vouchers issued under federal funding. At present, they're still operating off 2025's budget. Now, I'm not aware of a budget necessarily in place for 2026. So while it has not, these programs have not been shut down, I don't see where any money's coming from. So as of now, I can say it's a safe bet that you could potentially utilize any one of those three programs in some of your smaller cities. It would be a rather big impossibility in the bigger cities. So the market reversal really is including your larger cities. I would say your top 50 to 100 cities. For those that are in smaller cities, you're going to have a little bit more success in terms of funding, being able to apply, and those that already have a voucher, likely if you're not in one of the larger cities, then there's a high potential nobody's really going to lose their voucher because they never were able to, utilize the whole market to give out the vouchers. To be clear, in the U.S., you got about 50% chance, in terms of receiving a voucher and actually being able to use it. And so that rescission there, that means that a lot of you, despite your efforts, may not even be able to use the voucher if the money's not right. So let's talk about what that means. It means even if you got a voucher these days, does it actually match the market rates? I mean, landlords want a lot of money. If a landlord on 2 blocks away is billing out at $3,000 a month for rent, and then the other 10 landlords in that neighborhood have the same idea. Well, shit, if they're charging that, why can't I? And so we see overall pressure in the market, especially in states like Florida, California, Atlanta, Georgia, up the East Coast, and most of the West Coast. Well, we don't see market conditions being too pressing throughout the Midwest and southern states. So right now, I'm like everybody else. I'm keeping track of what the president's doing. And there are other conditions that do affect housing and vouchers. And believe it or not, removing dictators, as they say, are presidents of countries, and all the different things the country has going on right now creates a very thin edge for housing. Okay, last year we addressed immigration, and we're net zero on that right now. So a lot of housing was freed. We tried to remove nearly 20 million people from the country. There's more than 750,000 in immigration detention centers now. So that frees up some housing. New rules and policies cleared out even more people because they made a determination that if you are not a U.S. citizen, you cannot utilize or continue to utilize the program. So many more hundreds of thousands of vouchers flowed in. So we're seeing an easing of housing market, but the conditions still have not flipped over, in my opinion. And I think after 26 years as a consultant, my opinion has plenty of value in it. So I will tell you that, rents are still high depending on where you are. And so my concern is, what do we do as we are in 2026 and we approach 27? Are these conditions going to lower, and will the vouchers actually be worth anything? For those that already use a voucher, what's stopping your landlord from raising rent again another 200 to 300%? And we're seeing a pretty much the dissolution of other types of housing like trailers, because private equity keeps buying up trailer parks around the country, which has been a mainstay for those that are seniors. So we look at one of the lowest forms of housing, which is mobile homes. They're buying up whole parks and they're doubling rents. So there isn't a lot of places to run with this. I even suggested in earlier videos, as I may plan to travel during my own retirement, that we're looking at travel trailers. The market fell out on that. So that's one of the last things on the market that you could potentially use as a form of housing, and only have to pay in about 10 grand to get it, though you have to remain highly mobile with that. But it's one of the few things. I mean, even the boat market, boat houses have gone out there. Tiny homes have lost their mind. The tiny house market in, I think, 2010 was reasonable, but now the rich have gotten involved, and some tiny homes have turned into, you can buy a tiny home if you got $300,000. So they want to put marble tops and gold toilets in them. So they have ruined that market for low income. So the last remaining stage of this in terms of housing is basically travel trailers and RVs, which is something that's we've seen a very high number of in the state of California. But quickly, as we criminalize homelessness or mobile living, many cities will kick you out, and there's nowhere to go with that. So it's we're seeing a complete and rapid change of how our country operates and views those that are low income and retired. And it's an unfortunate circumstance. It's not any one president's fault. It's just a condition of the market that this is an evolution for America. That once you're no longer in the tax base or you're not presently in one, then you're almost designated as being not useful, and so you lose all your protections as an American. So retirement can put you in peril these days. I look at that and I'm concerned because when you stop making money, it means you're on a fixed income, and so it's disturbing to see how this is going to play out as we continue on our quick march to 2030. I think that midterms will play the biggest factor in all this. If that's successful and they manage to roll out time limits and work requirements, then I can tell you the rest will come very quickly. I don't think that's the end of the road. That's as bad as it can get. In fact, I expect this year to be rather revealing. This administration has its hands in a lot of things, and anybody that seems to get in the way or displeases President Trump, you're up for a good old fashioned kidnapping, and so that's getting business done. But I think there should be a stronger focus on, after we have removed so many people from the housing market that were not eligible, that we look at how to make the circumstance better to help veterans and seniors. I can understand the complexities of dealing with those that may not be in those categories and having people stay in housing for too long. America is not a soup kitchen, and America should not be a hotel either. But at the same time, we have to have affordable housing on the market. So either people have to go, we need to create new housing, or we've got to lower this super inflation that we've been dealing with. And it has come down some, but my concern is for housing, it is not. It still remains a big deal. The president has discussed banning private industry altogether from single family homes. That would alleviate massive pressure on the market, okay? But it would take a while. It would happen instantly. The effect would likely be felt over a number of years as we see a reduction of rents. But as a country, we've got to start looking at our housing stock, and we've got to stop allowing investment in that area because it's pretty much only serving those that have money and want to make money off of it. Having a bunch of empty houses that continue to gain equity, okay, and continue to rise in price, but nobody's in it, doesn't do our country very well. We're already on a very old housing stock in this country anyways, because builders cannot afford the inflated cost of the materials. Therefore, for them to make a profit, they can only build homes that are extremely expensive, and thus it cannot serve middle America or those that are low income. So we have a real genuine concern for that. Again, I'm going to put up my QR code for you guys because it helps reduce the number of questions. I have about 80,000 people that watch our channel. I find it rather productive to have appointments with people. I don't like discussing people's private matters in open chat, nor can I solve your problems in terms of being a Section 8 consultant through the comments section, okay? It's just not how business works. So put up this code right here. For those that are a little bit older and haven't caught on to this, like me, this QR code, you pull out your phone, open up your camera, point it at this, and at the bottom, you'll see it prompt a little web address below the picture itself on your phone, and you tap on it, and you're at my website if you need an appointment, okay? Like I said, my office at this point, I'm retired January. I don't do casework, okay, anymore. I did that stuff for 26 years. It creates a lot of stress for everybody involved. It helped a lot of people, about 24,000, I think, or less. And it's only at this point that I offer short consults. In other words, rather than give you a fish, I'm going to teach you how to fish on your own. And that means that I can advise you to do specifically what I've been doing all these years in terms of cases and people getting housing. That's answering your questions and help you navigate a very difficult system in a very unreal time. All right, so back over to comments. Good morning, Hot Sugar. I like that name. I think I should name my cat that, Hot Sugar. Quick update about Okiki. Many of you were around in my staple audience here when I rescued a kitten, and her name was Diamond. She's a little bit under a year, maybe a year. Well, she's waddling around the house. She's now tripled her weight, and I'm pretty sure I'm fixing to be a grandfather. So she eats an unbelievable. She's burning about $30 worth of cat food a week and treats and everything else. So I will try to feature her next time. For those of you who are pet lovers, you'll enjoy this channel. All right, moving on there. Freedom says, thank you, sir, for all you do. I keep asking the VA for HUD Bash voucher. My Section 8, 55 plus older apartment did have now. I'm going to be disappearing. HUD Bash does not appear to be affected. You're not going to lose the voucher if you have it already. HUD Bash is a federal program that covers those that served in the military honorably. And so I don't see any effect, and I've not heard anything in terms of Congress, the House, or any legislation that would suggest you're going to lose that. Now, HUD Bash is sometimes administered under continuum care programs, which may lead you to believe there could be a practical problem there, but I don't see that being the case. In fact, if we looked at all programs under continuum of care that are losing funding, that would be the last thing they would consider throwing out the door, because it would be in a direct conflict with how the president feels about veterans. Okay. Silver Brooks, good morning. Happy Sunday to you. Happy Sunday. I'm surprised I'm even doing this well in this video, because to be frank with you, I've had about 2.5 cups of coffee and almost threw up. The flu is not the joke, okay? And while I might look all right, I don't really feel that way. Half the time, I wasn't even sure where the hell I was. I was so out of it with this stuff. And it's been up and down for about a week and a half, many of which I had to get on the phone and consult people. And I got to tell you, some of you guys can talk like the wind, and it was absolutely heartbreaking how long I had to stay on that phone to help some of you guys while being this sick. But that's life. The show must go on, right? PCWC1, I am glad you are feeling better. I'm somewhat better, but I got to be honest with you. I can look on one hand and tell you how many times I've been this sick, okay? This ranks probably the 4th worst time. So I'm glad it ain't the first one. Mr. Good morning. Jay and Chap, good morning. I got no cats to feature today, guys. I'm sorry. They're all the cat. Look, when I got sick, the interesting thing about my cats are they all huddled up in the bed and laid there and slept the whole time. They literally mimicked me. They act like they were sick. So I think my cats kind of care, or maybe they were worried if I died, I couldn't feed them. You never know where it lies with cats. It's either they genuinely cared, or maybe they thought, well, who the hell is going to feed us if this guy dies? All right, moving on from there. PCWC says, I'm disabled. Thank you for the declaration. Hot Sugar, hi, Jay. Good morning. Amanda, hello. How are you doing? Urban says, glad you're doing better. I'm hanging in there, guys. Hanging in there. The cuts were scheduled for January 1st. Well, that's true. But it's not like a children's game. When you talk about cuts and federal funding, things take time. I mean, you can announce all the shit you want on national news about cuts, but let's talk about this realistically. For one, the way Congress does things and also housing authorities, it's like, okay, well, we know that, but because we already operate about 1 year behind and we've got one employee left working, it takes them a while to actually implement anything. It takes a while for money to flow or to be cut off. So the totality of this won't actually be felt for probably in a couple of months. In other words, though things have changed, it's going to have to build up to it slowly, because you're not going to see it like it's one big tidal wave, Nada says the cuts were scheduled. Okay, so we got that. Urban goes on to say, you are so incredibly informative. I better be after 26 years of consulting, to the point that I'm almost cross-eyed with it. Even my job becomes a little bit ambiguous at times. Hot sugar, it's hard to find affordable housing in the States. It is, unless you're in the Midwest, and I have a high concern for the Midwest states going all the way up to North Dakota, because the Midwest has remained a staple, but a lot of people don't want to live in a cornfield, okay, or a potato field. And even worse, we don't have a lot of big cities throughout the Midwest. And so when you don't have a city big enough, then you don't really have a housing authority. That means that you could have up to 18 different counties feeding off of one little old housing authority that's operated out of a 1940s house. And when you go to the housing authority in that 1940s house, you find two little old ladies running it, and they're having tea and donuts, and they don't give a shit how quickly things work. They split 800 cases, and they're serving the broader Ohio area. You see how fast that works. But the good news is, throughout the Midwest, waiting lists can be short. I've seen waiting lists as low as a month, or even states like Alaska that can grant vouchers within days if you're willing to move into a blizzard. I'm only kidding there. I do realize Alaska is not having a blizzard all the time, but you see my point. The more desolate it is, the greater opportunity. The question is can you port out of there? Can I grab a voucher in a state I don't even live in, never been to, and can I get them to issue me a voucher and then tell them, hey, you know what? Thank you so much, but I don't really want to live where you're at. I don't want to live in Alaska in the mountains at 8,000 feet. So I'd like to move that voucher down to Miami. Can you do it? Well, sometimes you can if you understand how federal rules work. Okay, I made a career of it. I'm not doing that anymore with casework. Okay, I managed to probably move around 10,000 vouchers all over America under different exclusionary rules. Just because a housing authority tells you you need to have that voucher and use it for a year in our town where you can move it doesn't mean that's true. It's just like court. There's the truth, but then the judge tells that person, we don't just want to hear about the truth. We want the whole truth. The whole truth is there are exceptional reasons why you can actually get a voucher in another state, but then force the housing authority to port that across the nation or move it. Better known under HUD as portability. I spent my career exploiting those exceptions, okay? So I do know it doesn't always work. Out of 50 housing authorities you deal with, you're probably looking at a ratio of about 2% of them. That means that 48 of them will deny, laugh in your face, hang up, slam the door in your face, and tell you to go kick some rocks. The other two housing authorities probably granted. Okay, but it becomes more difficult this year because with funding cuts as they roll out, what we're truly seeing is the president and Congress have allowed the ability of housing authorities now to deny portability. In other words, the big magic trick doesn't work as well. Housing authorities don't have to do what they call billing and absorbing anymore. If they don't have the funds, they can deny you for no reason, despite what federal rules say under Title 24. So the old portability trick don't work as well as it has all this career. That's one of the things they're closing out. With that, it's easier for me to retire because I don't like playing a game where I can't win. So now you understand that the old portability game may be coming to a close. Eventually, all good things do die. But it doesn't mean that you don't have opportunities out there. And just again, that's only half the battle. Getting a voucher is one thing, and then finding housing is another. And whether or not you can even pay the flipping rent they're requesting depends strongly on where you live. I have a person in California and asked me, about, well, what if I go to Arizona? Well, it's going to be more problems there because, look, half of California flooded Arizona and New Mexico. One of the few places left in the country that still has a lot of suburbs and big cities is probably Texas. You had Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, Austin. 3 of those cities rank in the top 10, and costs are still low in the state. So I believe that Texas will be a focus. But eventually, the state of Texas will end up in the same shitty situation as California and Florida. When you got monster states and you get too many people going there, it drives all the impact up. And so people in Florida laughed at California. The Democrats over there ran it bad, and now the state of Florida is suffering horribly because the state has been consumed with retirees, and the market is no longer stable there. half the cities in Florida, the major cities. Let me give you an example. The city of Miami ran an open waiting list. The average you should see for applicants is about 3 to 5% of people in the city maybe applying for a housing voucher. Do you know that roughly 28% of the city of Miami applied for a housing voucher? If a quarter of a city is applying, you've got a serious problem. Now that's not just Miami, it's all the way through the southern part of Florida. And so if you don't have money, then you may find it to be an impossibility to continue to live in the southern part of Florida. And as that will eventually shake out to be going all the way up north. And so as Florida plays out and becomes more expensive where only the wealthy can be on the beach, then they'll start looking at Texas. Why? Because retirees consumed also Arizona and New Mexico. And so now we're down to Texas, and I'm waiting for things to become unreal here. Same problem here. Eventually, all good things come to an end. Market, look, you could just 10 years ago, a 4-bedroom house you could get for $90K. You ain't even trying that now, okay? If you bought a house 10 years ago, you're sitting pretty good on equity. Now, the houses are still pretty cheap here. $300K and buy you 5 bedrooms and acreage. That ain't going to last forever. Eventually, it will fold to the same problem that the state of California and Florida have followed. Now, why am I not bringing up Chicago and New York? Well, they're different kinds of cities, highly concentrated cities. It isn't like they have a lot of land to operate on the way they're set up. So they're different examples of what markets can be. The conditions for places like Chicago, New York, Jersey have always been that way. And D.C. being one of the poorest examples, exactly what the president is. You know, Washington, D.C. is probably dealt with one of the shadiest housing authorities in America. Is considered in my top 4 on the shit list. Okay. And so I don't recommend it. And I'm also seeing a lot of East Coast try to run to South Carolina, North and South Carolina. And what used to be easy pickings throughout those states have become more difficult because people from the upper East Coast have now traveled down there. And unfortunately, North and South Carolina are simply not set up to take up half the East Coast in terms of low income. So that means further, we've seen market pressure pushed down to even places like Atlanta, which, hell, I used to live there a long time ago when I was a kid. You know, I live out by Stone Mountain, and it's a beautiful city, but it's got its own problems. And so we're seeing the market move around the nation. We continue in this pattern of moving around. People having to move with old family in different states because places you thought you could retire, you can't do it anymore. So we have to be constantly vigilant, very vigilant of the market as it changes. And I tell many of my clients, you have to adapt. If you try to sit there and stay in a California market, I can tell you, you add another 10 or 20 years of that, you will be homeless in that state because prices are not going to go down that much and they're going to continue to rise anyways. And so there will be a time, places like Florida, California, state of Texas, where it's just an impossibility to live there and be anything other than upper middle class. Okay. That's the way the world works. The only way to change this is if we all of a sudden as a nation made a decision to re-up our housing stock of single family homes and for low income people. If we drive enough problem and there's enough of an outcry, then there could be a national emergency in that market. I fully anticipated that President Trump would make that kind of announcement, but he changed gears, and so he did not do that. Instead, we're involved, we're involved in World War III, I suppose, to some degree. But that's often how the president brokers deals. He tells you, here's your options. You can do what I've requested, or I'll invade your country. And so it doesn't always necessarily do that, but it's good leverage. You only need the implied threat to start negotiating, which makes it a really forceful way to do things, but it's quite effective, as we've seen. You invade one country and then you warn 5 others. Nobody wants none of the action, so you see there's compliance. But the broader market is being affected by this in housing. So you think, okay, well, how does having Maduro in a federal prison right now going to affect me and my voucher? Well, look, it does. Overall, economics prove that housing and instability in the country in any way can affect things, okay? It also affects the mood of the country. So don't think that these things are not going to change. Moving on from there, Hot sugar is also hard to find a house section 8. Urban goes on. Tiny houses are just an expensive house. Yep. Minnie Mouse. Wow. Out of coffee and out of sanity. I feel you. Matter of fact, I'll have a sip of my own coffee. Minka, good morning. Mindhunter. We need to mass produce affordable housing. I know. But we also learned a shining example of that in China. China tried to pull one of the biggest magic tricks ever, and that was to build about 30 million apartments. Now they got whole dead, empty cities. Okay, they overdid it, but they didn't do it because they really cared about the Chinese people. They did that to try to prove that the economy was flush. Right? You could drive the market and show that your country is doing well by building a bunch of bullshit. A really poor example of that would be North Korea, where they don't even build the whole building. They just build the front of the building to make you think they're doing well. And so that drove the market. So now China's sitting on a bunch of shit that's falling apart and ain't got nobody. What I'd say is let's fly them buildings over here. But, I imagine with all the corruption, you might fall through the floor if the contractor's bad. So, and look, we got as many scams running in this country too. So we're not that far off of Chinese. When you were, most of you that are old enough know, it was made in Taiwan in the 80s. Now it's made in China. Look, some of that stuff out of there, the government needs to do something in China with all the scams. A low-income person can't buy a house. Their income would not qualify. That's not necessarily true all the way. So there's some truth in what you've said, Hot Sugar. It depends on where in the country you are. Now, if you want a nice little shotgun house or sugarcane field in South Louisiana, they'll let you mortgage that. But if you're thinking you're going to get out in New Jersey and the bank's going to cut you a $2 million loan so you can buy a broom closet to live in, nah, not really. So that's why the Housing Authority will proudly plaster, hey, man, use your voucher to buy a home because they know nobody can do it. So he said, yeah, well, can I speak to the person that's in control? Oh, we never even hired anybody because we knew nobody would ever use it. We just wanted to look good. Isn't that what the Housing Authority is there for? False advertising. We'll give you a little brochure about something, but then it turns out they don't even have anybody over the program because they created some bullshit that nobody believes. So home ownership is a possibility in certain parts of the country, but what we're seeing more often is people underwritten for loans that are stupid, like $150K. Unfortunately, $150,000 ain't going to buy you anything. Even in Texas, that might get you a trailer with a wheel. Okay, and then you can park your house and pay rent to somebody that owns the land. How the hell is that even a loan? Okay, so home ownership, there's some possibility depending where you are, but a lot of it's just nonsense at this point. This program's been running 20 years. It ran well all the way till about 2016. And then now it's turned into a shit shop, And so what I mean by that is almost 80% of that program is gone from all housing authorities. They only ruling to serve it up at housing authorities in really tough cities. And so unless you want a broom closet in the city of Detroit, it may not be an ideal circumstance. We need to reevaluate the program. We need to have Congress take a look at that and then get better ideas on how to fund this because ain't nobody going to buy a $150,000 house. If you're from a state where that's possible, then that's something. And look, I've had a few landlords have contacted me. It is possible to get a whole 4-bedroom house, say in the Delta of Mississippi, right? That is possible if you want to live there, say out in Jackson, Mississippi. But many you're not going to leave LA and move into Delta of Mississippi or out in Gonzales, Louisiana. Okay, so unless you want to boil crawfish and take the P-row as your transit, as the bus, then who the hell wants to live in a swamp? So that's what that stuff's good for at this point. So it needs to be reevaluated, funded better, and we need better underwriting terms. Okay, $150K, that ain't gonna do shit. Okay, let's be honest. And we've already seen the tiny house market rapidly. Why would anybody want to build tiny houses when they know they can screw people out $300K for them now? So unless you're going to move into a dog house, right, and install a toilet, that's about all you can get. Or you can go down to the Home Depot and pick up a shed and put a porta potty in it. That's about it. And I wish I was lying or exaggerating, but that is reality. Oh God, Mindhunter says we paid for it. Urban HUD foreclosure is a scam. Not necessarily. If you're dealing with Fannie Mae and Fannie Mac, then no. Look, if you don't know something about the housing market, let me tell you something, guys. Let's pretend that we're in Arizona. And let's pretend for just a minute a young couple, married couple with one baby on the way, purchases a $300,000 house, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. All right. And so they pay $320,000. Now that young couple's doing well, right? And then all of a sudden, one of them loses their job and they can't make that mortgage anymore. Okay. You know what happens? The bank takes it back, and that stock eventually ends up with Fannie Mae, Fannie Mac, and because it becomes a HUD home. And so it is offered at the amount that was due. And so a lot of these HUD homes that are foreclosed, they weren't HUD homes to start with. They become HUD homes because they offer the houses at a reduced rate. But you're trying to beat out every broker and real estate agent out there, you know? And so that's the problem. The system hasn't found a way to gatekeep all the investors. Okay, so that's why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, because there's no opportunities left. Because the very people we're trying to keep out of the shit are the very people that are using it as an investment instrument. These are not stocks and bonds, but they're treating them that way. You go in certain cities, man, look, half the apartments have the lights on and nobody's in there. They'll simply let the apartment sit on the market for 5 years while it goes up in value and then sell. And so we got whole buildings empty. This is what the rich do. They don't want anybody in there destroying that nice apartment. If the apartment continues in value and in 5 years they're going to make another 100,000 and they don't have a scratch in there, they didn't rent to anybody, there's more value, right? So why would you want to put somebody in there? So that's the game plan out across the nation. So unless we can get a presidential decree through the president and then approval by Congress to prevent any further investment in single-family homes, then we're going to be looking at a rather crushing reality moving into later years, going towards 2030, where at present, I think 1/3 of all the housing stock is bought up by private equity. So they're creating this inflation for us. It just happened to coincide directly with pandemic when it really took off. And so it leads you to believe it's one thing, but the ugly part of it is that's not really what created the inflation for housing. That's why it doesn't go down. Everything else is going down a bit, right? It's seen relief. But the reason the housing stock hasn't gone down is this was already a problem. It went to an extreme point as an investment tool. And it so happened it coincided with the market during the pandemic. So it makes you believe it was the pandemic did it. But no, that's not why. And they're even buying up even more now. I've had several multinational companies that are these companies are not even in the US contact my office in the last through 2025 with housing stocks greater than 2,000 homes. And they bought up too much and got in too hot and heavy and had a lot of mortgages. And they were like, oh, let's fill it with Section 8. So they called me. I don't have the capacity to help them. Nobody does, to be able to backfill 2,000 houses, much less guarantee success with that. Because in any market, when you look at a housing authority and they issue 2,000 vouchers, half of them are worthless, right? The other half are going to go out there. And then we have to look at market density. Does a market actually support that? And so the conditions have to be right to buy up 2,000 houses, drop it on my office and say, can you fill these? Well, no, not really, because there isn't enough vouchers in the city to ever cover that. Number two, you're not the only person that is allowing Section 8 renters. So, no. And so we have this big market of private equity that's tearing up the housing market and is driving this and will continue to drive it. The only intervention left that can stop this or slow it is going to be by Congress or the president himself. Now, we can dodge this for as long as we want, but if this continues to play out at its current rate, by 2030, we will be in a real crisis. It won't be a fake declaration of a crisis. It will be one. And so my concerns for other states like my state, Texas, and others, You're going to see this play out in your own hometowns, and it's going to be a big problem. So America can't live in all the hotels, okay? That's not even a plan. Moving on down. Urban, it's like Knoxville. Yep. So Miss Granny Rails, I need help suing HA. Well, I would advise contacting an attorney. I can only advise you in that area, and I cannot do it from a legal respect, okay? Attain. Hey, everyone, listening from work. Glad to have you, Attain. Well, guys, that's the best I can do. And to be frank with you, the fact that he was even able to carry on this long, despite just coming out of a flu, my mind still got cobwebs. So I'm proud of myself on making it this far. But unfortunately, I'm running out of energy, guys, and starting to feel a bit rough again. Flu affects everybody differently. I don't necessarily have to have a box of tissue out and sniffling, but it certainly has played a big role in how I feel. And so we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. If you have any of you guys have any questions or comments you'd like me to address, now would be the time to put it out there. I can do my best there. If you need a private consult and you need help with the system, I have a full understanding of code of federal regulation, okay, Title 24, policy, procedure, and almost everything written in the last 26 years. So in a way, I'm a walking library and probably have as much or greater experience than any one housing authority employee on the market. Here's a QR code. If you know how to use that, I'll put it up again for you guys. Use your phone, open it up, open up your camera, point it at the QR code, and just below on your phone, you'll see a link. That'll be where you can book an appointment, okay? All right, so my name is Jake. I am the owner of Section 8 Consulting. I am presently retired doing those short calls, and I'm going to move on to these questions for you guys. Minnie Mouse, 70, disabled. I added my daughter and grandson to my vouchers, so we got a house. Now she's moving out and taking the voucher with her. HA says, maybe. Can she do this? It depends on who's the principal of that voucher. Number two, she ain't doing jack without actually getting approval. Number three, you're not just going to up and move without the approval of the PHA. And what I don't think she's thinking through very clearly is you're 70, she's not. So her ability to have or use that voucher in principle was based largely on you. Without a senior in that voucher, she would have lost the preferences part, which means that she likely would not be qualified to keep the voucher. So it's going to be a big problem. So she hasn't clearly thought that through. And I get it. She's not a consultant, so she doesn't know. She doesn't have material experience for 2 decades. So I don't think she understands what's going to happen. So they'll end up producing that voucher to nothing, and then she'll be moving into a crack house. You need grandma on your lease, trust me, okay? And if they're a disabled person. So that's what made the voucher very useful. Without the additional people and a senior there, that voucher will lose its value, and she may not even qualify anymore to keep it if that's the case. And again, it depends on whether or not she's a principal. So I'd really have to talk to you about that in order to kind of determine what's going on with your request for tenancy and voucher to see how that might play out, okay? Urban goes on, get well, love. Thank you. Attain, I can't listen, but I'm reading the comments, recalling the vouchers. Yep. Quality Queen. I like that. I love that name. Quality Queen. Most of America living in hotels. Sounds wild. Sounds like America, right? So, Miss Granny Rails, they use our residents to get FFS slots. Possibly. I don't know if I agree or disagree with that comment. Amanda, or there is a 2-year time limit. That depends on midterm elections. Okay, if the Republicans do not keep the House and the Senate, then there may be a possibility they don't do 2-year time limits and 30 hours of work requirements. We need to keep a sharp eye on midterms. For those of you looking for a voucher or already have it, you should be tuned into CNN and Fox News daily during the midterms. That will determine what's going to happen with all this, okay? Bootsy Baby, I like that name too. Must take the time to give a serious time taking care of that bloom. Well, I'm doing the best I can, but for those of you that are older, over 40, The show must go on. Okay? Just like my home. Nobody's going to pay the light bill but me. Nobody's going to feed my cats but me. So you can only lay in bed so long. Nope. And let me tell you something. You got a job, nobody gives a shit if you got the flu. Okay? Just like when I did casework for clients all these years, you think they gave a damn? They called me on Christmas Day. I had one of them get smart ass with me. And I said, you know what? You want to come to your house, open my gifts in your living room? Then don't fucking call me on Christmas Day. But you see, that's the point. I can have all the flu I want. I can be in the ICU. It doesn't matter. Life must go on. 200 years ago when people arrived in America, you think the people riding around in fucking wagons went down to CVS and got some flu medication? No, Momo got out her fucking rifle. She went in the woods and killed a deer. You don't eat, bitch, unless you go hunting. So my point is, I thank you all for the concern of flu, but the reality of it is, the show must go on. Whether I'm sick or I got to miss an eyeball, a wooden leg, the show must go on. And so I appreciate all the sentiment. It means a lot, but for the sake of everything, I'm here to make these videos to help you guys to improve your position and knowledge and understanding of the system, help you navigate a system that would prefer you didn't get anything. And for many of you, to lead you to the light so you quit wandering around in the dark chasing your tail. That has been the point. YouTube doesn't pay me very well to make these videos, so I do it because I care. And now that I'm retired, nobody can say, well, it's just about money. Well, look, these short appointments aren't worth anything. Okay. It's a little bit of money. I might be able to open up a lemonade stand with it, but I do things because I want to. And I enjoy the company of all you guys. I enjoy being able to help you play a game and learn how to win it. Otherwise, we're doomed as a nation if nobody cares. If you have no moral, no ethic, no center to yourself, and nobody shares anything, then you're going to be stuck out there in the cold. And if I leave you at the hands of the housing authority, you might as well go ahead and roll your wheelchair off a bridge. Okay? They only help the people they want to help. I'm trying to even the game for you guys, and I have been for 15 years on YouTube. Okay? Over 1,000 videos. Many of you have taken that advice and have gone on to improve your life. You got in the system and you got out when it was appropriate. And so I quite enjoy leveling the playing field. I find great pride in that. Last comments, and then I'm out of here, guys. Mindhunter, we love you, man. Well, I appreciate that, Mindhunter. I love you back. Johnny Yuma, even here of Millennium Housing Apartment. I'll be honest, that name there has come across my desk more than a few times, but you must keep in mind that same name can be in multiple states and mean multiple properties. A lot of people use the word millennium. Wondering, drink a few toddies, hot water, honey, whiskey, and peppermint tea. I tried. Unfortunately, all I've got is tequila here. I had some whiskey, Texas whiskey, but anything right now that affects the body and can set me off. So, my head right now is kind of spinning. When I came to make this video, I was walking through the room and I felt like I was walking on clouds. Okay. So at any moment, things can happen with this stuff. It sets your whole body off. Okay. You don't see. Everybody knows we've all had this stuff. It's like the magic mushroom ride, except it isn't very fun. But I really do thank you guys for being concerned for my well-being. Claire Underwood, my God, we have a movie star here. Claire Underwood's here from the House of Cards. Jay, tell them, Jay, God bless those Kikis. Yep. They've acted honorably. They all laid in the bed, didn't leave me. They even acted sick. So I really do grant them that. Oh, Claire Underwood left us $10. Well, Claire, unfortunately, I won't be able to use your $10, but I'm pretty sure my pregnant cat will enjoy something. So you helped her and some treats. So we appreciate your donation. Chrissy B, I like that name too, man. You got some pretty neat names today. I'm physically disabled, living in an assisted living care in California. I'm now independent enough to live on my own. When I apply for low-income housing, there are no preferences for disabled. Why? Well, there is, but here's where the problem is, Chrissy B. I think you may, and I don't mean this in an insulting way, I don't think you're aware of the whole market. So you could be dealing, when you say low income, That can mean a lot of things to people. They could be Section 8 housing choice vouchers, Section 811, Section 202, subsidies, low-income housing. You see? So there are many kinds of programs. I don't actually know what you're really applying for, and that's the thing. If you are disabled and you're in a wheelchair, other things, you're seriously disabled, there are a lot of programs that do it, but that's not the only preference. Being old and being a senior and being disabled are not the only preferences. Okay. There are many more that are very powerful that you can utilize in your case, but it really depends on your, like everybody calls everything Section 8. 128 different types of housing and vouchers, but we all just call it Section 8. Well, it's not. All these different programs work different ways. And so for me, I'd have to talk with you to figure out more than just your disability, but all the other things that could be potential factors, and then identify the type of housing and voucher that would be most appropriate in your situation and whether or not the market conditions are correct for your city. In other words, would this take 10 years or would this be fairly quick? Are you operating inside of the housing authority for housing, tenant-based housing, or should we be dealing with continuum care programs that it could expedite the process? So there's a trillion questions with that. The funny thing is, like most people, you have an individual view of what you think you're doing, but your eyes have not been opened yet to all the many things that are out there. Housing authorities are not going to publish and make videos and movies about this. Okay. Their only job is to let you apply and determine whether or not you're qualified. They're not going to teach you shit about the system. That's how you can keep a woman pregnant and barefooted, because they don't want any of y'all to know shit. Okay. That way you have to run back and be indentured. Housing authority operates a lot like a plantation. The people there feel they're high and mighty, despite the vouchers. They think it comes right out of their purse and out of their wallet, but it doesn't. And so there's lots of options if you're aware of them. But the housing authority is not paid to make you aware, educate, or anything else. I made that my life's mission for you, to clear that muddy water. In other words, rather than wandering around barefooted with the housing authority, I try to give you weaponize that for you. So when you go in there, you know as much as the people dealing with you. You understand in principle what your rights are and how to carry this out and not take no shit off these people. Okay? And not everything that comes out of the employee's mouth at the PHA is always honest. I've dealt with housing authorities and employees that denied that certain federal rules were even on the books, even when you gave it to them. So ignorance can prevail, quite frankly, with PHAs. You hire somebody. Yesterday, she was the fry cook at Popeye's Chicken. Today, she's the caseworker. She's read 3 pages in her manual. Out of 10 or 20,000 pages, she's read 3. She's now an expert. You've called her. You're annoying her. You need information. She don't know shit. The lady scrubbing the fucking toilet knows more than she does. And so you guys often walk away with information from the housing authority employee making $6.25. Okay, she's making $6.25 at night. She's spinning around the pole at the light pole with a change cup. And you expect these people to be experts, but they're not. They're just behind a desk. Any prostitute could take a job at a housing authority. And the reason I'm upset about that is because most of you actually have a qualified need, but you're dealing with hookers. You're dealing with people that just got their diploma out of a fucking bubblegum machine. Now, not all housing authorities are that way, but in principle, the way I preach that is nobody's convinced me otherwise. Shall we go into reviews for every housing authority in America? They have the lowest reviews of all businesses in America. A housing authority has found a way to put itself below 1 star. And so, by reputation alone, I can tell you that unless you hang around long enough to learn, and people like me provide the information through federal code, policy, procedure, administrative plans, then you'll continue to wander in the dark. I don't want that for you, because we're not birds and bees and dogs that need to live in the magic forest. You know, many of you, let me tell you something about it. Many of you guys that are older, the reason I went to school and even had the school to go to is because you guys were the tax base. You worked all your life as an older person, and then you retired. Everybody that survived while you worked, every child that was born after you started working, you helped their ass be able to drive on a road, be in a school, or do anything in a city because it was your tax money. So for you, and many of you, your right to be able to use the system for housing is rather ideal. It means this is not something you need to be ashamed of. Now, if you never did a damn thing in your life and you never worked, you have nothing. Nobody owes you nothing. But for many of you seniors, you're the very reason that a lot of us even had a school to go to, a road to drive on. You were the tax base. Therefore, the same way you collect your Social Security check and your fixed income and you walk to the mailbox with your head high, don't ever lower your head in terms of needing to use this as a housing solution, because you paid into a system that allowed hundreds of thousands of American kids to go on and continue to be able to survive in their own community. Because at one point, you were the tax base. Remember that, guys. But we have irrationally criminalized the idea. Everybody's a crackhead and a baby producer. We still have these prejudicial behaviors and thoughts all spewed out by the nasty news in the 80s, that everybody's a junkie and that you're worthless, that you carry no value because you need this. You don't feel that way when you cash your Social Security check. Then why the fuck would you ever want to worry about that if you worked all your life and you need to use a system that it only requires you to be a red-blooded American, right? And low income. So we're going to take the shame out of the game. If you're not qualified and you're just running a hustle, I met people like that. I just hang up on them. I don't help fools. But the reality of it is, many of you have done exactly what you're supposed to do. This service is available to you, as it is all Americans, whether you're the president of the country, whether you work in Congress, whatever it may be. If you meet the merits of the rules while this is available, then there's no shame in that, ever. So we need to stop that kind of thought process for many of you. But I do recommend that you use this as a hand up and this not become a long-term solution unless you're a senior or you're disabled and you cannot, for any reason, work. That's where we have a problem. Too many people with their hands in a cookie jar. The classification of disability becoming so low that even a person that has diabetes can get a voucher. That's a problem. Now, the diabetes is a serious or not serious problem. It can be. This is factual, very true. Thank you. Christy B, time for me to book that appointment. Well, look for that QR code. So, Miss Granny Rails, they reduced my rent 11-1. I'm counting my son's PA income only to raise 3-1. Said, okay, agreed. Hidden knowledge. Hey, everyone. I hope everyone has a blessed day. Trump changed the law on rentals. Okay. Thank you for your comment. Amanda Chris. Thank you, seniors. Hidden knowledge. Jay, I was paying $246 in rent. PHA lowered it to $217. Landlord went in and raised my rent from $900 to $990. Well, they are allowed to do it. And be glad it wasn't more than that. Okay. I know that's nothing to be thankful for. But my concern there is if that's going to be the pattern of the landlord to jump rent $90 every year, then you can get the hell out of there. You start looking at options. Okay. That's the problem. It's good till it's not. And if landlords are just going to run a game of let's keep charging until nobody can afford it, then don't give them the privilege of using your voucher. Okay. Well, guys, I'm going to close it up. I really enjoyed talking with you, but I'm starting to lose. Like I said, I still got the flu and I'm starting to lose my train of thought and everything. That just comes along with this. I burned up my energy for today. So I'm going to go lay down for the rest of the day and try to recover from my video. I will see you guys tomorrow for a short video, and then Tuesday I'm going to make up some videos that I've missed, but we're going to go light, and I'm going to try to keep the videos shorter for a while. And look, I just burned up 59 minutes of my life. One day I will learn to shut the fuck up and quit making these long-winded videos. But I tell you, I seem to have a problem. If anybody can help me with my dyslexia, I'm making long videos. Please chime in. I won't cry if you're ugly about it. All right, guys, it's been a joy. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you tomorrow for a little bit, okay? Bye-bye.